give like your, elevator pitch or your Uber pitch, what you do and what specifically about Facebook ads that you've shed to the industry that's just been creating some of these amazing case studies.
I've spent over $1 million a day. I launched the very first lead gen ad unit. I did the alpha for DPA. I did the alpha for Canvas ads, rest in peace.
And then you realize you can spend even more, like you're underspending right now in that sense.
And I've, installed system and process and built 7, 8, 9-figure businesses. At least 7 or 8 businesses I've taken from high 7 to low 9 over the last like 4 or 5 years. One of the biggest things that those brands all have in common, my number one piece of advice would be to figure out.
Yeah, so we had one account, and in fact, I'm actually building a case study around this one particular account right now. And we launched dynamic creative testing. We did our usual testing campaign, did really well for the first round. Then the second round, I was like, hey, let's try a dynamic creative test, and it crushed. I mean, just did amazing. And then I was like, okay, cool, let's try this on another account, and it did not spin at all on that particular ad set. It spent like, was spending $14,000 a day on this one campaign, CBO, and the ad set was getting like $50, $100 a day on it. So I'm like,
sure, the ads weren't good enough. Got it.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, my heart's telling me, hey, let's set a minimum budget on this and force spin to it. But then I'm sitting back in my crate. Let me look at it from, the disruptor's perspective.
Have a little Charlie in the back of your head. It's going to work out all right for you. I promise.
What would he say in terms of why it's not working? Well, that's not good enough. That sucks. And we've seen that from time to time in our account, where you drop a really hot ad in there. That's amazing. It'll immediately get all the spin and crush for the account.
And that's what you want. That's a great problem to have.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, cool. I was like, let's just validate this. Let's throw this in a testing campaign and force spin to it. If we force spin to it and it gets no results, then Facebook was telling us the correct truth at the beginning, but we're just too stubborn to admit it. So threw in a test campaign, ran it for 3 days, $100 a day, and guess what? Nothing. Like literally blew $300. So I'm like, okay, that just completely validated in that aspect right there.
Yeah. It's funny how like it knows what it's doing. When you let it actually do its job, and when you get out of the way of micromanaging employees, sometimes they're going to do all right.
That is true. So we're definitely exploring it a lot more right now in the agency. I think the one thing we're looking at right now in terms of a problem is when you throw in a dynamic creative and, a whole new ad set in a campaign with a high budget, and then that ad set sucks up a bunch of spin. Really good if it's getting positive results, but then when it's not getting positive results, that's the next thing we're looking at. So we're just looking at like tossing like a rule for something like that. Hey,
sure.
Here's just like a rule that's very, very, very loose. If it spends 10x our target CPA with nothing, then just cut it. So that way it doesn't blow too much.
Yeah, you might, because Facebook is ultimately optimizing towards the end user experience and it's optimizing towards delivery on estimated action rate, given the fact that it gets all of the spend, because spend is a meritocracy, you might have created something that creates a great user experience, but doesn't ultimately align your objectives with Facebook. So you're not algorithmically aligned, where you produce something that demands all the spend, but doesn't produce any business. And those are great lessons to learn from, and definitely not things you should abandon, but figure out why it got spent, and also focus on what about it didn't drive the action. And ultimately, sometimes you also have to say, is that a bad thing? Because if it's getting you a ton of spend and you're reaching 3, 4, 5 times as many people, and you have an account with a lot of those, the incremental lift on every channel might also spike. So you have to be measuring, I use ecosystem ROAS, so I can measure all of it on a Google sheet. I don't use any fancy tech. I learned how to do attribution. Fun story. My old boss was this woman, Marina Randolph, and she was basically the woman that invented the "But Wait, There's More" on the infomercial. She was the vice president of Guthrie Rinker. That may or may not be true, but that was like her job, right? And she used to tell me, I used to come in here with all the reports and everything I hear everybody talking about these days about attribution and ads and ABO and interest and all of this stuff. And be like, no, this is doing great. Look at these numbers. She'd be like, I don't give a damn. And it took me forever. And she sat me down once and like, this is how I know you're wasting my time. I can't see the results of your work. And I was like, well, here's all the attribution. She said, when I was spending $100 million a year on television, my attribution model was 15 minutes after the infomercial aired.
Wow.
Get me something that rock solid, or you can't come back into my office and talk numbers. It took me 3 months to figure out how to get 15 minutes of her time. And within 18 months, we took 310 Nutrition to nearly $100 million. Once we figured that out. The point is, like, you have to understand the omni-channel impact of the work that you're doing. And I see so many folks saying this ad isn't working, or interest groups just work better, or lookalikes just look better. I'm like, I get it. Your Facebook report looks better. The ego of the marketer is improved, but your finance department doesn't know you exist other than as a liability on the bottom line as a cost. There's no debit coming in because of your work. And that is extraordinarily humbling to basically get laughed out of an office from somebody that's managing, 9-10 figure business that has no interest in your time. And you think that everything you're doing is good. And that's the hard part, is to realize that what you've been taught to value, not only as a business, but also ourselves. Like, how many media buyers have been taught to say that they're good because of the X result? And then to know that that metric that you've based your ego, I'm not saying that as a negative thing, like your ego, super ego, and it, like your self-valuation is built on this bedrock of something that you falsely attributed value to. That is extremely difficult to wrap your head around. And I love, more and more I hear about people learning the bigger numbers that matter and really embracing that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like a biggest thing. It's just a paradigm shift from going like, hey, I want to make 6 figures a year to like, hey, I want to build a business of 7 figures a year. Do you want an interest group that does $50 a day, makes you $150 a day? Or do you want a broad campaign that does, $500 a day and makes you back $1,000 a day? Yes, you're a lower ROAS, but you can scale way more. And then you start impacting the things with CPA and LTV, start adding that to it. And then you realize you can spend even more. Like, you're underspending right now in that sense.
Yeah. Like, I always tell people, in my experience and I've, installed system and process and built 7, 8, 9 figure businesses. I've been doing it. At least 7 or 8 businesses I've taken from high 7 to low 9 over the last like 4 or 5 years. At one point you're lucky, then it's coincidence. Then it's like, okay, well, maybe this thing works. To the point where now it's kind of like on demand and it'll happen. And what I can tell you is, one of the biggest things that those brands all have in common, like, if I had to set up a business right now to get you to 8 figures from 6, my number one piece of advice would be to figure out, how can I allow a worse result on Facebook to be a good thing for my business? I only have $1,000 a day to spend. Why isn't it 5? The reason it's not 5 is almost always because you can't let Facebook run that inefficiently. My solution to that is, you need to have a better business model. And once you figure that out, I'll give an example with 310, just because we referenced them earlier. When I came in, they were doing about 5,000 a day, like a 2.5, 3x on the 28-day, 1 day attribution. When I left, we were in the 30 to 50K a day at a 0.8 on a 1-day click. Because we knew that customer was worth about a 4 or 5 in aggregate over the lifetime value. So when you start looking at Facebook as an amplification of intent creation and the growth of your business, instead of the place where you make money, Facebook isn't a salesperson. Facebook should never be thought of as the place where you make your money. You know, if you ever watch Shark Tank and somebody's pitch is all we need now is really good marketing, you're going to get laughed off the stage. And my reason to bring that up is if you say all I need to do to scale my business is has Facebook be profitable so I can continue to scale it, you've already lost. And so the point is figuring out all of that other stuff and then making Facebook as stable and predictable as possible so that you can amplify the volume of all of those other things. Mm-hmm. Like if you truly want to get better conversion rate optimization on your landing page, you sure as hell better not be running more than broad as an audience. Because, or running multiple types of, like how many different type of people do you want coming to your store that you're going to try to optimize after the click? Your store should attract the type of attention that your advertising brings in. But when you start to force that to many different types of people, well, you're going to have 50 people of this type, 1,000 people of this type, 400 of this type, 300. There's no way you're going to be able to have a solution that fits for all of them. But if instead they're all whatever, because every ad makes its own lookalike audience based on its performance. If your customer experience is built off of just optimizing the flow of who your ad attracts, and your ads are built around a sustainable, like just whatever works, just getting attention, showing the product, overcoming objections, all of that stuff, then your ability to make CRO is going to improve. Your ability to test LTV is going to improve because every customer more or less looks and feels the same. They all have the same customer experience before the journey. So figuring out how to improve LTV by 20, 30, 50%, it's going to go way up because everybody's the same. And then trying to make business decisions that'll grow so you can plan for 3 months, 6 months, a year in the future is going to be a lot easier when your data set is one type of customer because you're ultimately promoting one product and attracting ads that bring in that type of user. And maybe you want to expand who those people are. And so you find different ads that will target different individuals, but still you're strategically expanding the business. So you go from a car dealership that just sells minivans to being a car dealership that sells minivans and sedans. You don't go minivans and then F1 sports cars. There's no vertical integration. That doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But like, to use the real world example, if you're an iPhone accessories business with cases, instead of then going to cat toys, maybe you go to like chargers or like phone accessories. Like you bought one, you're likely to buy the next. Now the customer journey feels very similar and it becomes really easy to build a brand. But yeah, I don't know. That stuff is just fun to me. And I love to see how many more people are embracing it. And people doing the one campaign and the dynamic creatives. And I've gotten to the point where I just like send people links from chats I did in 2018, 2019, ebooks from 2020. I'm like, I love that you finally embraced this. Here's the roadmap for your next 6 months. And I get some people pushing me back. They're like, nobody likes a know-it-all. And I'm like, sure. But if I can save you 6 months, why not just listen, especially if I'm going to help you out the whole way? And I don't know everything. I just have the luxury of making hundreds of millions of dollars of mistakes. There's a benefit from that, you know, like I get to teach and every day I have folks coming in from ad accounts from different agencies and experts and gurus. Like I can't tell you how many people I talk to where it's like, hey, Nick, you know that account that's not really working out and this guy said goodbye to you 2 weeks ago? They became my student 3 weeks ago. Like that kind of stuff happens all the time. And so I know how people are doing things. And when I give people advice in public, I'm not calling them out to be a dick. I'm like, I've already seen your internal workings. I already fixed your problems 6 times. If you listen to me, I'm going to be able to help you. And it's fun. Plus, you know, I get it. I feel like this. I'm curious what you think. The elite media buyers, the elite agency folks, the elite marketers. There's something like, did you see Maverick from Top Gun? You know the Top
Oh,
Gun Maverick movie?
absolutely. Watch that movie twice.
There's a little bit of that in a lot of the really good media buyers. There's sort of that like alpha dog mentality, right? There's a little bit of that swagger that you kind of need a little bit of it. I think you need that confidence, you know? And so I'll gladly be Maverick with the new class and just trying to help people out. It's not that I'm trying to be a dick. I'm just trying to let you know, you think you can't, you need 3 minutes 15. I can do it in 2:18 every time. I'll knock it in. I'll do that run in under 2 minutes 30. Like, I'll just show you the way. And then all of a sudden you can do it, you know? Like and I'll reference this, for 2,500 years, nobody could run a mile, or 2,200 years since it was defined, from like the Greek warrior running to the city of Marathon, and that distance being calculated. For 2,200 years, nobody could do it under 4 minutes. In the 30s, a scientist / like part-time athlete in the rain on a windy day did it in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. It took 48 days for somebody else to do it. You just need somebody to show you that it exists and it can work, and then all the floodgates open. And I don't know. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I don't even remember where we started. I feel like I completely derailed this. I apologize.